smells like burnt shit.
What's next?
I'm all turned around.
Don't look at the state map.
This is my second day in a fucking car, man. Stop.
Please help!
Are we gonna help him?
No.
Stop!
This has gone too far. It has to stop.
Where is he?
We'll get through this.
I know.
Hello, I'm your host, Nick Leach, and you are listening to the Cinema Club podcast. Cinema Club podcast is like a book club, but for movies. And instead of doing movies, we are in the middle, smack dab in the middle of our Last of Us limited series watch. And joining me, as always, is Chris Amick and Paige. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the show. Excited to dive into this one, and just want to take a second. I really loved, last week's episode 3. That was sticking with me throughout this whole week. I was texting Nick, and I'm like, man, like this episode is just. I think I said it was like the best episode I've seen in a year of television, but I think it's like an all-time great. Just because it had me thinking about it. I rewatched it Sunday before I dived into the new episode, which is kind of a cool way to start episode 4. But yeah, just kind of wanted to, again, say how much I loved episode 3. I think it might end up being my favorite episode of the whole series, honestly.
I'm excited to talk about this episode because it seemed like it had a lot to do with the gameplay too. Everything was like down to the T with like the workbench or like the get them into the building. It was fun to see how they incorporated that into this episode. So I'm excited to deconstruct it and talk about it a little more.
Absolutely. So with that, and I totally agree with you, Chris. Last week's episode 3, was just so great, so amazing. Actually, even our discussion last week was something really special. So much so that while I was editing it, like I was even tearing up just in our, not even talking about like the episode itself. I totally agree with you. It's one of my favorite episodes of television, period. I cannot stop telling other people to watch it. Like everybody I've talked to this last week, it's like, I don't care if you watch the rest of the show. You need to watch this episode. For sure. But that's in the past. We're talking about episode 4, and episode 4 was a bit of a departure from what we've seen so far. It wasn't a self-contained episode like the rest of them have been. It was definitely, in my opinion, kind of a setup episode, which is fortunate and unfortunate because it allowed for there to be a lot more detail to set up for the next episode, allowed for them to really get into some of like the real details that we haven't seen so far. I mean, like you said, Paige, gameplay was a lot more involved in this episode, but also it left me feeling a bit lacking. In fact, I had to watch it again today. I watched it yesterday, but also had to watch it again today just because I honestly forgot a lot about it leading up to our discussion, which is unfortunate. But
so on the way home from work today, we're driving and my girlfriend was like, what episode what are you on? Re-explain to me what happened on Sunday. I'm like, well, this is what happened. She's like, oh yeah, that's right. It wasn't like personal or like touching at all. But it was something to get us to the next point. I just think that, like you said, they lacked a little bit, but it also was kind of an intro to meet our next characters. And I think that was the only purpose of it for this episode. It was still fun because it got action in it now, but...
So what I like to say about this episode, I said it to a couple people today at work, is that episode 4 is actually kind of the entire season of Endor. It's just all set up for the next episode. It's unfortunate. I know a lot of people like Endor, but it just felt to me it was all just exposition to get us to the next episode. But it makes it so that this next episode already is gearing up to be a massive, amazing episode. I mean, just the trailer at the end of the episode just looks Awesome. So with that, let's just dive right in. Following Bill and Frank's story, we catch back up with Ellie and Joel on their way to Wyoming to reunite with Joel's brother Tommy. With Ellie using the map to navigate and annoying Joel with some terrible puns from a book she found, Joel drives the pair of them and they stop off to camp in the forest. Making sure Ellie knows the dangers surrounding them, he warns her not to light a fire as people could come find them. So what are they going to do, rob us, Ellie asks. They'll have way more in mind than that, Joel tells her. So just starting this episode, we know that Ellie has a gun, and that's something that really becomes a huge plot point, story point in this episode. And I thought it was really cool to think about that Ellie's fascination with guns really comes from the power that the gun has, and also the fact that she really looks up to the survivors of this world, and those people have the power to kill. And so a lot of her questions with Joel involved, like, what is it like to kill? What's it like to shoot? Like, it's like she's preparing herself, and she never wants to be in a situation where anybody else has to save her like Joel did. She wants to be able to defend herself because she failed to do that as well. Like, she's been bit twice at this point. She failed just like Joel did, honestly. And it's not even so much that she wants to protect herself. She wants the power to stand on her own, just like Joel. It harkens back to when she sees Joel beat a man to death right in front of her and what she experiences, along with like the inevitable revulsion and like shock. It's also an aspiration to her because that's what she wants to be able to do as well. She wants to be able to protect herself. But also along with that, like, it's that type of stuff that led to her being bit in the first place. And I think it's safe to say that the traumatic experience that she had when she was bit the first time would have been different if she had a gun to protect herself. And so I think we're going to see that going forward, maybe see kind of that back to when she was bit. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I think that especially with her having the gun, that's what it's all about. And that, I mean, again, it goes back to she wants to be like Joel, and maybe she's too much like Joel.
Well, I think what we'll see more and more as the show continues is that Ellie and Joel are very much alike. I think in this episode, Joel is seeing parts of Sarah in Ellie, but also seeing parts of himself. And I think that's partially why I really like this episode, is because we're actually getting to see their relationship begin. And, you know, I liked also, kind of on a different note, but I liked that kind of the beginning of this episode, they were showing us that Ellie knows how to handle a gun without, you know, a character saying it to another to let us as an audience know, you know, she's taking the bullet out of the chamber, you know, she's kind of got that intense scene in front of the mirror. She's like, oh, dang, this chick, she's not going to let the world get at her, you know. But kind of back to Joel and Ellie's relationship, I was like you guys, kind of reflecting on this episode. I'm like, what is this episode really about? And it really is about Ellie breaking through to Joel, finally. You know, when Joel's admitting to Ellie that he doesn't fully understand how siphoning gas works, but, you know, he knows how to do it. I think that moment's really important to the relationship journey that Ellie and Joel are on together as we're viewing them every episode. And you know, like Ellie finds that joke book and she's sharing those corny jokes throughout the whole episode. And I think, you know, with every one of those jokes that she's sharing, she's slowly whittling away at Joel's hard shell and the walls that he's put up and held up, you know, these so many years. And also, you know, when Joel and Ellie are eating that canned food, Ellie's like, oh, this is great. And then Joel, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he agrees with her. I think that's the first time they've agreed on anything this entire show. So that was, I think, again, a breakthrough moment. Even a little thing like that was building the relationship that Joel and Ellie are starting to actually have with one another.
It's really fun to think about, or it's really interesting to think about that in Ellie's backpack now, there's a joke book and there's a gun. And they're like just the polar opposites of like where Ellie is at right now. And also Craig Mazin said it's like fuck you, tuck me in, their relationship. And their relationship, it goes to say that their relationship is starting to get really muddled and mixed at this point. It's starting to be a lot more organic rather than forced.
I really did like that campsite scene between them two. And I don't know, I think sleeping in general is very vulnerable, but he did end up getting up to protect them, which nothing was going to happen. But just having her say those jokes and puns, which is completely her personality all the time, every day. So it gives a little snippet to their whole relationship for sure.
But also what's interesting is that when Ellie is pushing Joel about finding Tommy or not, he says, I'm persistent. And Ellie loves that. Like, that's what she aspires to, and it's persistence that is what connects the two of them. Joel also says, there are people that I attach to who I try to keep alive, and I don't do a good job of it. Like, Joel has a certain kind of narcissism to him that he thinks that he has to go save Tommy again, like he did in the first episode when he had to get Tommy out of jail. And Joel likes to put on a show of being annoyed that he has to be the guy, but he loves being the guy. Like Bill, he needs somebody to save. And I think it's so interesting that comes out of all of this, and we see it happen over and over and over. He has to have somebody to save all the time.
Yeah, kind of like how in episode 3, Bill shared that Frank was the one who gave him purpose. I think, like as you're kind of saying, Nick, Joel's purpose is exactly what you just described. You know, it's to not only protect, but be the guy that always will go in and help.
And that is what ties episode 3 to the rest of the show. That was the purpose of episode 3, of us taking a whole hour out of an hour, 20-minute episode to just bring along that fact that this is who Joel is. And we see that happen the rest of this episode, and I'm sure the rest of the show too.
I also liked, just from a cinematic aspect, that shot when Joel and Ellie pull up in the truck and it's all clogged up with cars, and Joel gets out and he looks between all the debris and vehicles underneath that tunnel, and he sees it's completely clear. There's bright light at the end. And it's kind of like, even if you haven't played the game, even if it's your first time watching this story unfold, I think that really was kind of the moment where it's like, okay, we could have gone down this road and everything would have been sunshine and daisies, but now we're going off the map, the routed course, and just about to go down. But I just like cinematically that shot of just Joel, you know, and his POV looking out in that tunnel.
So the pair continue their journey, but they hit a pileup of cars on the freeway, which is impassable. Joel decides to take a detour, and the pair end up in Kansas City, passing what clearly had been a QZ with its doors wide open. Something definitely had gone down. They see a man pleading for help, and thanks to his dubious past, Joel immediately senses it's a trap. By then, though, it's too late. Their windscreen is smashed, and they run over a spike strip, causing them to crash into a shop. With bullets raining down on them, Joel urges a terrified Ellie to hide in a hole in the wall as he attempts to fight off their attackers. He manages to kill a few of them, but doesn't hear one sneaking up behind him. As Ellie sees Joel being strangled by the attacker, she grabs her gun and shoots him in the back. The attacker, a teenager, pleads for his life. Joel tells Ellie to go back behind the wall, and he kills him before the pair of them manage to hide in a darkened room.
I did like this town scene, and especially because it ties in with the gameplay so incredibly well too, with just like fighting off the bad guys. I don't know what to call them. The
NPCs, yeah.
Yes, those guys. Yes, yes. And Ellie saving Joel. But I think in the game, Ellie actually kills this guy. Correct, Chris? That was her first kill, I think. But in the show, I think that they just made Joel finish him off. I can't entirely remember.
I can't either, honestly.
I wonder if they changed it for a certain purpose, because on TV shows, I think you can't be young when you kill someone, is what I'm assuming.
Well, actually, there was a really good reason that they did change that specific little detail. And it's not that they couldn't get away with Ellie killing somebody. It's that they did talk about in this episode how this wasn't Ellie's first kill. She had killed before. It was a really important story point for them to show that when she is confronted by violence, she is a bit horrified at what she's capable of, but then also then to go a step further, that then when Joel is supposed to comfort her, he doesn't. And it's an opportunity for her then to be like, oh, wait, I can't be a baby. I can't just cry. Like, if I'm going to be like Joel, I got to just wipe this off and be hardened by it.
In a TV show, you get more of like a character development too. A game is a game. You're there to kill, not much of a story. Even though The Last of Us is a story in the game, it just, like you, I agree with you. It makes more sense to do it this way. And I never really put that together that she's like him in that moment either. So that was kind of cool that you said that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this scene. You know, Joel killing that Brian, I think is that kid's name, you know, while he's like screaming for his mother is a bit chilly. And again, we get to see Joel's protective love coming out in a very violent manner. And while we're seeing that process happening, or knowing it's happening, like you were kind of mentioning, we see Ellie, you know, processing her part in that violence, and the fact that Joel is doing, you know, he's killing somebody. As I was watching that the whole sequence of events go down, I was thinking to myself, is Joel going to kill this guy with his own knife to save ammo? And then he did, which is pretty dark. But it's something that you do in the game all the time to try and save bullets, since, you know, ammo is so scarce within the game, especially on the harder levels. And then it also attracts, you know, unwanted attention as well. So I really liked how they did that. You know, Joel's a survivor. He's alive now for multiple reasons, including that he's very aware of resource management. Also, they're in a city at this point, and there are clearly inhabitants. And so if you use a gun, that's immediately going to alert people of your location. And especially if there's just been a massive firefight, and then it stops, and then you have a lone shot, like, it's going to alert people they need to still come because somebody's still alive. 100%. And I kind of didn't notice this at first until like halfway through the episode, but I was realizing that I think in the game they go to Pittsburgh, but in the show they're going to Kansas City, which doesn't really make a difference, but I just thought it was interesting that they did that. So the switch to from Pittsburgh to Kansas City was literally simply just a choice by production, because Alberta, Canada, specifically Calgary, where they were shooting the majority of the show, looked a lot more like Kansas City than it did Pittsburgh. But to go just a step further, it also provided a better location for the story to happen, so that it would make sense where the story was going, especially the time of the year that they wanted the story to happen in. So they wanted them to be closer in geography to the next location in the next episode, in the next part of the story that they're going to tell when they leave Kansas City.
Yeah, and I noticed that, but I just automatically assumed it was a production set thing that they wanted to do instead. So I'm like, yeah, okay, made sense to me.
I also wanted to go back to Brian, because Brian was written to humanize the enemy and to ground the violence. Because like in the game, violence just becomes noise. But in the real world, violence isn't clean. And the people that you hurt are just as human as you are. And so Ellie is like really affected, because to this point, she has had such a fascination with violence. And here she's really confronted by the violence that can cause somebody who has just as much what her violence can do to somebody who has just as much a life as she does. So it really humanizes, and I love what this show does, because in so many other post-apocalyptic shows, the one I like to bring to mind and compare it to is The Walking Dead, is you have so much black and white. Like, the evil people are just evil, the good people are just good, and maybe there's a gray in both, but it's mostly just bad and good. Whereas in this show, it shows you that you can have antagonists who are just as human and have just as good like morals and are actually trying to protect the people that are in their group as anybody else is. It just happens that they confront other people, and they confront our protagonists here in a way that their motives don't align anymore. Their motives are different, and that makes them enemies.
I do like how you explained that. That was very good. That Brian character, I just took it as someone that was just pleading to stay alive just so he can go and tattletale on these people that are here. So I would have done the same thing Joel did, and I have no remorse for it. But he was only a teenager too, so that gives a little more humanizing for it. If he was an older guy, I wouldn't have felt as bad. But I do agree that the show is humanizing the characters.
Exactly. So elsewhere, we're introduced to the terrifying Kathleen. She didn't appear. So apparently she didn't appear in the games, but she is the leader of a violent revolutionary movement, along with her right-hand man, Perry. Immediately, we find out that she is on the hunt for a character named Henry, and she won't stop until he's dead. As we meet her, she's pointing a gun at an older man who reveals he's a doctor. Before Kathleen can shoot him, she's shown the body of a teenager that Joel killed, who we find out was her brother. While she's told it was the work of outsiders, she's left convinced that it is down to the mysterious Henry. Kathleen is told that there's no chance her brother will survive, even if she had a doctor, and she returns to shoot the older man before telling her group of followers, "This is Henry's work, you understand, and he won't stop until we stop him. Find who did this, find every collaborator, and kill them all."
I love when they make like the bad guys, this woman with such a sweet, sensitive voice. It makes it 10 times creepier and psychotic, and it's wonderful. And I already hate her just by her voice, and looking at her and what she's just is great. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking about, obviously this group of people overthrew the people that were there before, the Fedra, overthrew them. And I could see, how in the real world, she would be an individual who people would rally around and for. Like you're kind of mentioning, Nick, a lot of times the big baddies, like Negan from Walking Dead, you 100% see, okay, he's evil. But in this case, we're seeing somebody that has had to change their whole approach to life because of these circumstances they're in. And I think that a lot of times that lends itself to being, a villain that is more dangerous, because you don't really know exactly their next step. It's not all like big bad evil. It's more calculated, and a lot of times it's very desperate. As we're kind of seeing in this situation, Kathleen's like, doctor's not going to save him. All right, goes back and blows the doctor's head off. That's just our introduction to Kathleen. I mean, it's very, very violent.
I mean, love is desperate. Love is, I will do whatever it takes to protect those that I love. I mean, what we see here, instead of like some like Mad Max savagery, a group of people that just want to like destroy other people. We've seen that before. We've seen that in The Walking Dead, most other post-apocalyptic groups, where they just want to kill everybody. They just want to savagely kill people. But what happens here instead is that in this world, and really in the real world, what we would see is that groups of people would form, neighbors, family members, the people around them that they already knew, the people that were in their church group, whatever. They're going to come together because they love each other. And it's because of that love that, again, they will protect each other at all costs, and that anybody who gets in the way of that needs to be taken out. And so it's again, it humanizes the people in the show. It humanizes this show. It makes it so much more believable.
Yeah, I'm like, as you were kind of saying earlier, Nick, I'm liking that, in the game, we don't really get any backstory on who these people really are. We're just trying to get through, the city and survive while they're tracking us down. While as, in the show, we get to see the humanity, the human aspect, get to learn more about who these people are and what drives them.
I was going to take a step back and just say I'm going to appreciate the production sets and the costume design, because I've been staring at it for some reason this episode. I'm like, comparing to The Walking Dead, which is honestly one of my favorite shows as well, like everything looks aged. Their costume design looks aged. And I noticed it more this episode with Kathleen. I don't know why I was staring at her jacket, but it looks like 20-year-old dirty jacket, not just something they just found in a store and decided to wear.
There's so many convenient stores in The Walking Dead that they just come across new clothes all the time.
Oh, it drives me absolutely up the wall. I'm like, you're in an apocalypse and you're gonna put makeup on and bring your hair and make it pretty and like look wonderful all the time. Yeah, no, well, these people actually look like they've been living in their 20 years apocalypse.
No, I think the sets and the costumes are perfect for this show. It fits the world that it's living in, that we as the audience are being shown. And they do such a good job at making the costumes match the characters. Because like Perry, it's clear we don't even know much about Perry. He's a new character. We've never seen him before. But it's clear that in the clothes that he wears, even though it isn't like militaristic, it's very clear that he has a military background. Same with Joel, like his watch. It's very clear that was a watch he got in the military. And then later on, when we see, like, we are never as the audience given the exposition of this group of people has taken over Fedra. But we see that in the costumes of the people that are like knocking down the doors. It's clear that they have stolen like the riot helmets and riot shields and all the weapons and the uniforms of the Fedra mercenaries and soldiers. And they have now taken them, have like spray painted all over them. So there's so much storytelling just in the costumes. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, Paige.
I also wanted to throw in Perry's character. I thought it was really cool that the actor who plays Perry is the same actor who played Tommy, Joel's brother, in the video game. So I think it's really cool. They're trying to bring and incorporate the voice and motion capture actors from the game and try and give them roles in this show. I
mean, what I'm really excited to see later on here is we're going to see Ellie from the games playing a very key role.
Did not know that. That's cool. I'm excited.
Ashley Johnson, I think, plays a flashback as Ellie's mom, which is going to be super cool. And I've seen like interviews between both of them and they have such a great friendship. It's adorable.
They do. Yeah. Yeah. Ashley is like, just look at Bella Ramsey and you can see Ellie.
And that's coming from Ellie herself, which is where she portrayed her for the last like 10 years. So I'm excited. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm sure fans are going to rave about it.
So moving on, armed with guns, battering rams, and even tanks, the group forces their way into every building they can find on the hunt for Henry. And Joel and Ellie's position is suddenly starting to look very precarious. They devise a plan to get to a skyscraper opposite to scope out the situation, and Joel attempts to talk to Ellie about shooting the attacker. Trying to hide her tears, she reveals it wasn't her first time, with Joel deciding it's high time to give Ellie a gun. Joel and Ellie make their move, and we see Perry, Kathleen's right-hand man, telling her that they have a lead on Henry's whereabouts. He's not there, but it looks like he could have been recently. We get our first clue as to who Henry is and who he might be with, as the wall is covered in children's drawings and there are cans on the floor. Kathleen tells Perry that Henry won't let Sam starve and insists he must be close by. However, it is quickly revealed that Kathleen and Perry have more pressing issues to worry about. Perry takes Kathleen to the ground floor of the building, which has sunken in, and very creepily, we see it's moving and shifting about. The pair flee the building, with Kathleen ordering it to be sealed and insisting they'll worry about it later. Yeah, that floor shit was creepy. And do you guys have any idea what might be under all that shit?
I think we're going to see a bloater, big baddie.
They're the big over 20 years type of monster, not a monster, infected that we're going to see. It's like the floor was breathing. It was very creepy. I do agree. Pisses me off that Kathleen is willing to like pretty much almost kill her community because she's so fixated on finding these people that it's probably going to turn out bad for her.
Yeah, even Perry's like, oh, okay, sounds good. But he has a very obedient, it looks like, second in command. But yeah, I did, when I was watching, I'm like, oh, this is definitely set up for the next episode. They're not going to reveal what's going on here. But I think all the setup in this episode is definitely going to be worth it in episode 5, especially with the shifting floor.
For sure. And I think the scene where Ellie asks if Joel is all right, I think that was a really, really interesting scene. It really developed their relationship even more, because when she does ask Joel if he's all right, it rattles him because, again, his whole existence goes against that question. It's him who's supposed to make sure everybody else is right and never allow anybody else to ask if he's all right.
I really enjoyed the one-on-one connection that you see when he's teaching her when he gives her the gun back to her, and that I don't want to say daddy daughter because that is not it, like mentor type thing. Here, let me show you how to use a gun. Do not put it in your pants because you shoot your leg off. She still goes and puts it in her jacket pocket, but either way, I thought it was the build up for the next scene that we're about to see.
But also the exposition that is told, or the background that is told behind we get a little bit more of a view into Ellie's past, that she had touched a gun before, she had felt a gun before, she had held a gun before, she knew to keep her finger off the trigger, and she said that she had learned that in a Fedra school. Joel and Ellie make it into an abandoned building and start to head to the top to have a look around to find a way out of the city. Exhausted by the climb, they stop for the night, and Joel spreads glass across the floor so he can hear anyone who might try to creep up on them. Ellie asks if he's sure he'll hear it, pointing out that he doesn't hear well out of one of his ears. Joel decides to use his not-so-developed people skills to ask Ellie about what she meant when she said it wasn't her first time hurting someone, but she doesn't want to talk about it. She asks if it gets easier as you get older, and he says that it doesn't. So Ellie, being Ellie, enlists the help of her book of puns, leaving Joel reluctantly giggling as he falls asleep. When Joel wakes up, he hears Ellie calling him. Opening his eyes, he's horrified to see her holding her hands in the air with a gun to her head. Looking around, he sees a young boy pointing a gun at him and lifting a finger to his lips to tell him to be quiet.
I really do enjoy this scene as well. It reminds me of the camping scene. Sleeping and so vulnerable, and he finally feels comfort with Ellie that he doesn't even want to stay up and watch around him. He just wants to go to bed. And that's probably where he got himself in trouble right here with a gun to Ellie's head, especially with the glass. So that means they were in the apartment the whole time. I don't know if they didn't want to do a search or something, but
that, or it just goes back to what I thought was a really interesting character choice and writing choice here, is that, I mean, it's brought up earlier in the episode where it's pointed out that Joel has lost some of the hearing in one of his ears. And when he falls asleep so that his dominant ear is up and he can hear if somebody came into the room. But then when he wakes up later, he's actually flipped over to the other side. And so he can't hear. So it could just be that too.
That makes a ton of sense, because I'm exactly like Joel, because I cannot hear out of one of my ears. So when you're sleeping on your good ear, you're silent. It's like a Zen moment. So I can see how that would happen.
But I totally agree with you, Paige, in that in the fact that, I mean, the joke book, like I said, is another character that reveals kind of their relationship, and it's this joke that she says at the end here. About the diarrhea and it being in your pants, it being in your jeans. And him laughing at this point, he's just been like, oh, these are really annoying punny jokes. These are terrible jokes. Hasn't laughed at all, hasn't even cracked a smile. And here it shows that where their relationship has come, the fact that he does laugh at this joke. He does find it funny, and he feels comfortable enough. Even he's surprised, actually, that he feels comfortable enough to be more vulnerable and actually laugh at her jokes. And he can't stop laughing. I mean, he's so repressed. This is the first time we've seen him even smile in the show, let alone laugh. And so has he not laughed for 20 years?
Yeah, this was honestly the sequence of events you just described, Nick, this is my favorite part of the whole episode, personally. Like you said, we learned that diarrhea is hereditary, which was awesome. I was chuckling out loud a little bit when that, because that delivery was so good.
It's so earnest and genuine.
Yes. And, it happens after Ellie tells Joel that she doesn't want to talk about hurting someone in the past, like you said. But then it shows the two of them laughing and connecting, maybe really for the first time in that moment. And like you said, Nick, we hadn't really ever seen Joel crack a smile before. Something that I am liking, and I was going to ask you about, Paige, is that I feel like in this show, it's taking a more vulnerable take on both Joel and Ellie's characters than in the game. At least that's how I'm perceiving it. And I'm really enjoying that. Especially as we're getting to see more of their characters open up as we progress through the series. I feel like they're more closed off in the game.
I think they don't really have a connection until like further in the game either. I think it's the TV adaptation that they're trying to make it more personal so the viewers are enjoying it more. So yeah, I agree with you, Chris.
Cool. No, it's good to know. Okay, awesome. And then something that I picked up on, what I thought was really good, really great writing, was in the first camping scene in this episode. Joel is trying to sleep, and Ellie is the one who initiates conversation. While the second time, here at the end of the episode, Joel is the one who starts talking to Ellie. And at least how I perceive that is it's showing that he's actually interested in creating a relationship with Ellie.
He's no longer just cargo.
Exactly.
And I've noticed through every single episode too, they have like a full circle. Whatever happens in the beginning does it exactly the same or just different at the end. And I like how they're doing that for the show.
Yeah, I keep saying it like every time we talk about an episode, but the subtleties that they incorporate, visually and in the writing is just so really well done that, if you do take the time to rewatch an episode, you kind of pick up on a lot more little tidbits along the way than you might have the first time. So the rewatchability of this show is definitely really high for me, but just because of those little details. And again, it kind of makes it so that it doesn't, at least in my view, feel like a filler episode. I think it definitely is setting up. I think that actually the same writer director is doing episode 4 and 5, but it's definitely setting up a lot of stuff to happen in episode 5, but it doesn't really feel like a filler episode just because of the interactions that Joel and Ellie share together in this episode. And I'm also really excited to see Ellie and Joel interact with Henry and Sam, that wake them up at gunpoint at the end of the episode. I was kind of like thinking, oh, are we going to see them? Probably not. They're referenced a lot, obviously, in this, but for some reason, it wasn't clicking for me that Henry and Sam were the characters that Kathleen was going after until we have to get introduced to them. I can't remember if that's the same case in the game or not, but regardless, I'm really excited to see, how that all plays out in episode 5, because at least in the game, it is pivotal stuff in the story.
Yeah, in the game they drive a good portion of the game. They're really big characters, so we'll see how they incorporate them into the show and see what happens.
Because clearly the writers are taking liberties with a lot of these characters that are so pivotal in the games too. So it'll be interesting to see the interpretation of Henry and Sam this time around.
I can't remember, was Sam in the show, was he wearing a mask? Not a mask, but was he wearing like, not goggles? What are they called?
No, but he wasn't, but he had face paint.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, yep. He was wearing face paint because of the pictures he were drawing. All of his characters were wearing face paint, or not face paint. They were wearing masks.
So that brings us to the end. We've done the synopsis. We've gone through all the story points. So if there's anything that I missed in here, anything that we didn't get to talk about yet so far about this episode, I want to open this up to you guys. If there's anything else, now's the time we can talk about it, discuss it, all the good stuff there.
I don't think we missed anything. I think we grabbed all the core points from the episode for sure. And I honestly don't have anything else to say. I think we really discussed all that we could for this episode, because it was, like you said, Chris, it's not a filler. It's definitely more of a get us into the next episode. So I'm really excited to see and meet Sam and Henry, because they were fun characters. They were really fun, and I'm excited to see how the show brought them to life.
Yeah, and honestly, they're kind of faced with the impossible task of following up that third episode anyway. So it's set a very high bar.
No matter what they came out with for episode 4, we were all going to be like, this is not as good. What's going on? I think it's a good thing that they have now made it a 2-episode arc, or a 3-episode, whatever it's going to be, arc here, instead of just trying to follow up episode 3 with another encapsulated episode that just stands on its own, because it would be an impossible task. But put 2 episodes together that are the same story, 2-3 episodes that are the same kind of story arc, it gives that a little bit more weight after following such an amazing episode that is episode 3.
Yeah, like the only thing I was gonna throw in there too is I was gonna ask if do you guys usually watch the episode when it drops Sunday night, or do you usually wait?
I usually watch it right when it comes out.
I usually watch it Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. Well, because at this week it was the first time I was like, all right, I'm going to watch it right when it drops, because I watched episode 3, kind of timed it, so I had like 10 minutes between the episodes. But I was having trouble getting it going on HBO Max, and I had to go in and out of it a couple times to actually get it going. And I'm wondering if that was maybe because of the ever increasing number of viewers tuning in, but despite the Grammys, I think, or Sunday night as well.
Well, yes, because the viewership of episode 4 is up 60% from episode 1. So yes, more and more and more people are getting into this show. So it's a wonder that HBO has been able to still stream like they have and not have as many crashes or bugs or difficulties, because everybody is watching this show, which is why, and I know we're going to really release this episode after the fact, but they are releasing the next one early because of the Super Bowl Sunday. They're releasing on Friday rather than Sunday, which is absolutely the right move.
I honestly think it's a great move to do, because I don't think they want to lose viewers, and I highly doubt they would, because I'm not a football fan, so I could care less about the Super Bowl. I would definitely put the Rams first. So I'm excited that they're doing that, but I like watching the comparison of how much the viewership grows per episode. And it, like you said, I don't remember the percentage you just said, but it's amazing.
I think it was up 17% from episode 3. I
3,
believe.
yes. And 60% from episode 1.
Pretty wild.
That is a massive jump. If you think about it, that's a lot of people.
Massive jump, and already still having the episode 1 I talked about it in our episode 2, how many people were watching episode 1 and comparing that to how many people were watching House of the Dragon. It's just insane. But with that, we're to the end. And as always, I want to give you guys a chance to give your final thoughts, final reviews about this episode, episode 4, leading into episode 5 next week. And also leave us with where we can find you.
Yeah, so if you want to hit me up for photography or to collaborate, you can hit me up on Instagram at christophers.snap.shots. I'm very excited that the next episode is coming out so soon. And I'll definitely be tuning in Friday night to watch that and be excited to break it all down because I think it's going to be a good episode, honestly.
So my handle for Instagram is @RacerXGirl, and according to Nick, I can never change it. So therefore, I'll be 80 and have a RacerXGirl handle. But anyways, I am excited to watch the next episode. Unfortunately, I'll be in Tampa, so I'm going to stay off of social media so I don't get any spoilers. But I'm excited to see what's going to happen. And Sam and Henry, can't wait.
I said at the beginning of this that I think that this was just a filler episode, and I still do think it's a filler episode. I will stand by my statement that I think that it is the Endor of The Last of Us, and simply because I think that this episode is going to be seen completely differently after Friday, after the next episode comes out, because this is a 2-episode story. This is a 2-episode arc. And just like Endor, I was such not a fan of Endor when I watched it. I thought that it was just dumb. It was so slow. But then I went back and watched it again after all the episodes came out, and it was like one of the most amazing things that Star Wars has come out with. Like, my opinion was completely changed because it works together. It only works together. And I think that about episode 4, honestly. I think that there were things in this episode that were amazing, that helped move the story along, helped to develop the characters, helped develop the relationships, but it wasn't a full structure. It was setting up for the next episode and makes me so excited for episode 5. But I am going to have to come back and watch both of them together. And I think that my mind is going to change once they are put together. But with that, it was a great episode. Had a great time. Again, I could watch this forever. I just want to be in this world. Just give me an IV of The Last of Us. Just put it straight into my veins, please. I just love it. Well, with that, like I said before, you can follow me on Instagram. My tag is nick.fleeto.leach, and join the Cinema Club Facebook group if you haven't already at facebook.com/group/the Cinema Club TCC, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcast, anywhere you listen to your podcast, and leave us a review on iTunes. It really will help us reach more listeners. And message me on Facebook if you would like to be on the podcast. And finally, we have a brand new support option on our channel on Anchor. So if you are feeling generous, please consider supporting the show, and we can make sure that the life of this thing just continues to grow. You can check that out at anchor.fm/the Cinema Club. We have a lot of big plans going forward to make sure we are more consistent than we really have been with our content, and to get back to the main roots that this show really started with in the first place. And that is for you, our listeners. And so we'll be keeping you posted with updates on the plans that we have going forward very soon. But we are excited for episode 5 next week. So come back and listen to us, and we will see you on the next one.